Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Festa de Goa, a celebration of Goan literature, art, music, food, and more. My name is Asad Lalji. I am the CEO of Avid Learning and the curator here at the Royal Opera House. On behalf of the Royal Family of Gondal, Ashish Doshi, Honorary Director, and myself, I welcome you to India's only surviving opera house and your city's very own cultural crown jewel. In the narrow lanes of Fountain House and the bustling markets of Mapusa, there's a unique blend of Indian and Portuguese influences that have shaped a culture unlike any. Beyond the postcard-perfect beaches lies a rich legacy of art, literature, music that resonates deeply within the Goan identity. The idea of Festa de Goa came after speaking at the Goan Heritage Festival in 2022 at the invitation of Vivek Menezes. While presenting the impact of the Royal Opera House on the cultural fabric of Mumbai, Goa's rich heritage and creative practice mesmerized me, sparking an idea to bring the celebration of Goa's cultural legacy to Mumbai. Avid Learning and the Royal Opera House have always championed showcasing India's rich cultural diversity. This festival is about celebrating and highlighting the deep cultural exchange and intertwined histories of Goa and Mumbai across generations. As we gather here this evening, we're reminded of the enduring connection between two dynamic coastal regions. Festa de Goa is a testament of two cities and how they have long influenced and shaped one another, sharing an endured artistic dialogue that continues to inspire. We're delighted to present this evening in association with the Stuti Choral and String Ensemble, led by Parvesh Java. A special thank you to Vivek Menezes, co-founder, co-curator of the Goa Arts and Literature Festival, for advising us on this sojourn. Now let's begin our cultural odyssey. It is my pleasure to introduce our first panel, Konkani City, Goa in the Making of Mumbai. Three literary luminaries will take us on a journey through Konkani literature, from its oral traditions to contemporary forms, touching upon themes of identity, tradition, modernity. Damodar Bhai Mauzo will also share his reflections on promoting and preserving Konkani in today's world. Please put your hands together and welcome on stage Gyan Pitawadi, Damodar Mauzo, Consulting Editor, Art India, Abhay Sardesai, author, poet, and journalist, Jerry Pinto.
Hi guys, give us a viva for Goa. Come on, what? You can do better than that, Bombay. 1, 2, 3. Lovely, well done.
हांगा आयिल्ल्या सगळ्या लोकांक म्हजो माये मोगाचो येवकार, which is Konkani, for welcome to all of you. I'm Abhay, and we've got two extraordinary people here, Jerry and Bhai Mauzo, and both Jerry and I will talk to Bhai and call him Bhai instead of Damodar Bab, if it's okay. You know, one of the things, I guess, one of the driving forces of a festival like this is the opportunity it affords to not only celebrate the idea of Goa and the sort of constellation of Goannesses that all of us belong to, but also the idea of the various Konkanis that we inhabit and that inhabit us. And what's very, very fetching, what's very, very apposite is what both these propositions, the idea of Konkani and the idea of Goa, sort of signal towards, which is the idea of cosmopolitanism. It's the idea of Bombay as well. So, you know, what's very, very, very interesting is these various coincidences, these various equations that seem to be slowly releasing themselves as we sit here and as we ask Bhai to actually dwell upon what his first reminiscences of the city are, and considering the fact, Bhai, that you've been a student at Podar, and then, of course, you moved to Goa to take over the shop and stuff like that. But some of your earliest reminiscences of Goa.
Somestak muzo maye mogacho namaskar. Hangat makdista गोंयचो मोग काळजांत घेवन आयिल्ले लोक चड आसात आनी ताका लागून हांव इतलें सांगता गोंयांत आमी एक ओपार आसा मोग आसल्यार हून वडे घाटार पावतात मोग आसल्यार हून वडे घाटार पावतात. If there is love, you can take the hot pancakes across the border, across two ghats. So this is a saying which I remember today. I am sure you have that moog in your courage. With that you have come here and probably to taste the pancakes of Goa, and as hot as they are today here. I'm very happy to be here among you because we don't get an opportunity to mix up with the Goans when in Mumbai. I meet Goans wherever I go, but probably not so much in Mumbai, because every Goankar, Mumbaikar, we get to meet in Goa, particularly at Goa Literature Festival or any other festivals or any other festivities. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm really amazed by this idea of holding Festa de Goa in Mumbai, in the city of Mumbai. The relationship of Goa with Mumbai, everybody knows. I have a special bondage, which I will come and discuss with you later. But then, yes, I hope. I am a writer, I write in Konkani. I write in Konkani, I am translated into English and other languages, thanks to Jerry, who has translated my novel into English, and many others who have done so into other languages. But then, basically, I'm a Konkani writer, and Konkani, with Konkani at my heart, I believe that any language is a major component of any culture. So for Goa, for Konkanis, it is the language that is the core, at the core of it. It's a major component of our culture, of our ethos. I cannot think of Goa without Konkani. Of course, those people who have come and migrated from Goa and settled here, they have accepted the language of the soil. So the people who are living in Mangalore and distant places like Cochin were left 400 or rather 500 years back and settled in those states. They still continue to speak Konkani. That is really, I must say, hats off to them. But then we always, our great poet, Konkani poet, Manohar Rai Sardesai, he would say, there was a time when history of Konkani created the geography of Konkani. Because people had to, they ran away in exodus to settle in distant places like Karnataka, Maharashtra, Mumbai, and also in Cochin. But today, the time has come when that geography is creating history again. Because we are coming together as Konkani people. We are coming together as one people. So I'm very happy that, again, we are expressing our oneness with a distant place from Goa, the Mumbai. And thank you.
I was thinking just when we were talking about cosmopolitanism, so there's Abhay Sardesai, South Goa, Central Goa. Here's Jerry Pinto Moira. There's Abhay Sardesai, Hindu, or at least born Hindu. And here's Jerry Pinto, born Christian. And here is in between is the Bridge, who wrote Carmeline, and whose novels are, and short stories are full of Roman Catholic Goans who had a wet nurse who was a Roman Catholic lady, whose son was Anthony Gonsalves, who brings us, of course, to Amitabh Bachchan in Amar Akbar Anthony, My Name is Anthony Gonsalves. And that, I think, for a long time, the image of the Goan in the Bombay imagination was the image that I think was given to us first by Raj Kapoor with Mrs. Disa, right? Yeah. Mrs. Disa was... Shri Charsobis. Heart of gold, a dress from like some 1930s vintage, 25 years old, a savage outlook on life, and an inability to speak Hindi as she should be spoken, though who knows how that Hindi should be spoken. We know now that is a contested space as well. So then there was like, you know, Phirna Kenna Michael da Rupi Kardanda Karta hai, Outgoing Sosaiba, etc., etc. So there's a history of lilies and roses and men drinking and repairing cars. That's what we did. Okay. But I think there is a much greater influence on Bombay than Bombay realizes. And there is, of course, an impact on Goa, which Goa also acknowledges, because, you know, we got the losers as colonists. Like, I mean, they were really bad at doing really much. I mean, they just, they didn't, I mean, they had Goa they were the first to arrive, right? I mean, the Portuguese were the first to arrive and the last to go. But if you wanted a job, you had to come to Bombay. So there was a constant interpenetration between the two places. But I remember my grandmother having a passport to come to Bombay and having to go through customs checks. You know, and for very many years after 1961, our Gujarati neighbors would come down and say, if you are going to Goa, please get me some cheese. I think, but why? Because they have Amul cheese in Goa. But that was a memory of, you know, Portuguese, of Goa being an entrepot and having all these foreign things like port wine and Swiss cheese coming in, and you could buy them and bring them back. And of course, you'd have to pay customs. So I think there is the relationship between Bombay and Goa, and the way Bombay's cultural spine was developed with theatre, borrowing, I think, heavily from the Parsi theatre and from, you know, from other resources like the musicians of Bollywood. Yeah. All these things need to be studied. And Vivek Menezes, can you get off your butt and do a book? Yeah? Okay.
Okay, just to sort of, you know, stretch what you were saying, Jerry, and what Bhai also said some time back, this is probably a great opportunity to actually talk about this extraordinary man called Shenoy Goebab. And one of his earliest books was called Goinkarachi Goya Bhaili Vasanuk, which is the settlement of the Goinkar in a place like Bombay. So Bombay has, in fact, and Shenoy Goebab, who passed away in 1946, has rightly been called the father of modern Goan and Konkani literature. So, you know, one of the first texts that comes out in Konkani, in modern Konkani, is a text that actually speaks about the location, the position, and the experience of Goa in Bombay and the Goinkar in Mumbai, as it were. Also, it's very, very special to have, you know, somebody like Shenoy Goebab dwell on the idea of what linguists now call diglossia, the idea that Goans speak Konkani at home, and some of them say that their mother tongue is Marathi, and some of them actually at one point of time thought that their mother tongue is Portuguese. So there's this lovely play which I remember by and Jerry called Mogacha Lagan. It was, I think, no marriage? Mog is a name of the, and of course and also it's a pun, you're right. So I think it came out in 1913, if I'm not mistaken. Much before that, is it? And of course, before that, you had the great Bruno, you know, Edouard Bruno de Souza, who came out with Cristão Gorabo in 1905, and you know, who edited one of the earliest magazines in the country called Udanteche Sarok, Lotus of the East, again from Bombay. And you had the great printing press very close by in Girgaon called Gomanta, you know, Chapkhana, which the Nayaks actually, yes, Kashinath, and I think after that R.N. Nayak as well. So, so coming back to what I was saying, there's this lovely scene in this play called Mogache Lagna, where there's this character called Gharubab, who says something very interesting. He says that my parents don't speak in Marathi. My parents don't speak to me in Marathi. I don't speak back to my parents in Marathi. How is it then that Marathi is my mother tongue? I think it's incredible, and this was way back before this entire fight between Marathi and Konkani as far as the state language, you know, which really caught fire in the 90s. and even earlier, in 92, when Konkani was included in the 8th schedule, and 76, when Konkani became a literary language in the eyes of the Hori Sahitya Academy. So, the point is that Bombay, in that sense, apart from, of course, all the extraordinary people that Jerry spoke about, the terrific musicians and all these stock characters that have populated, unfortunately, Hindi cinema, which otherwise has been supremely cosmopolitan, and Jerry and I have constantly spoken about this. We find that Goa and Bombay have occupied important spaces in each other's collective imaginations. So I think it's quite a special relationship. And Goans, very interestingly, have actually spearheaded the most important modern art movement in this city. The first batch of the progressive artist group, you had somebody like Francis Newton Suze. And then the second batch, you had somebody like Vasudev Gaitonde, both of them Hadache, Nizache, Goankar, as they say, who actually gave a direction to art, modern art, contemporary art in this country. So the contribution, and I'm just talking about art, Jerry just spoke about music, and you just look at the technicians who have contributed to cinema. You just find, and you look at the singers, you look at, Lata Mangeshkar, you have a whole host of people. We could just come up with listicle upon listicle, and you'll be amazed to know the kind of contributions that Goans have made to the city. Bhai?
Well, Abhay, you just spoke about Mogache Lagna. Mogache Lagna is an adaptation of Moliere's play into Konkani, but it was really good. But it was written with an intention, with a motive to bring out the potential of Konkani and also hit out at the people who were ashamed of Konkani and also who were, side by side, they were claiming to be Maharashtrians or Marathi-speaking people. Earlier than that, in 1910, it was the first book written by, first book to be published by Shunay Goembab was Goicho Mumbaikar. Goicho Mumbaikar, where it was a satirical, it was not a play. It was more of rather, it's a poetic but then prose narrative. But it was a wonderful thing. It humiliated the people who tried to behave as if we were rather embarrassed among the people. We were rather apprehensive of speaking in Konkani among the other people, other than Konkani people. So they would be ashamed of their own tongue when they were in the midst of the people from Marathi, among the Marathi people. So that is the reason why he hit out at it. And it was the struggle started, well started, with all good intentions. It was started by Shunay Goembab. It was not only lopsided, just he did not dedicate himself to writing only literature. What he did, the best was that the book that you mentioned, Goenkaranchi, Goyam Bhaili Vasnuk. That is the history of the diaspora of Goan people. It dates back to thousands of years back also, not necessarily of the latest thing. How many of you know in Goa there are Pandavacho Hovreo, that is the caves of Pandavas. There was in Margao, if anybody from Salset you will know, there is a chapel in Margao called Pandava Kapel. But it is not Pandavas, it is Punna. Punna is Purnananda, was the Shishya of disciple of Buddha, whom Buddha had sent him back to Goa to preach Buddhism. So he came back more than 1,000 years, more than nearly 2,000 years back, came to Goa and lived in Hovreo. Hovreo are the caves. So one of them was near the chapel where the chapel was built. So the chapel was called, and even today, the Catholics call it Punna Kapel, and the Hindus think they are wrongly calling it Punna Kapel. It is Pandava Kapel. It is not Pandavas. And wherever you go in Goa, you will find Pandava Hovreo. They are Punna's Hovreo. Punna is the disciple of, and he was from Goa. So he reached Odisha, that side, and he went as a trader, and then when he met or when he listened to the pravachan of Lord Buddha, he changed himself and he gave up the trade and preferred to stay there. And then he was, after he was accomplished, I mean, a disciple, then he was sent back to Goa to preach Buddhism. So there is a lot of history which was thrown the light upon by Shanayan Bab. Not only that, he also wrote whatever that is not available in Goa. He wrote the Vyakaranachi, Konkanichi, Vyakarani, Bandhavod. This grammatical structure of Konkani, it was the basic what is needed for that. So everybody criticized him because he was writing in Konkani, as if it was a taboo to write in Konkani. Yes. And particularly, that was the time when the controversy started. Controversies, Konkani Marathi controversy, to claim that Konkani is a dialect of Marathi, so Goa is a Marathi-speaking place, so the territory should be annexed by Maharashtra. So that was the political reason to it. But anyway, Shanayan Goenbab is one who gave us this self-respect, which taught us to conduct themselves with self-respect and confidence. That is the really great achievement of that time. By the way, Shanayan Goenbab was Mr. Valavlikar, who was working for a German embassy. And can you imagine 1910, he was working for a German embassy and his salary was 4-figure. In 1910, can you imagine? Yeah, but he spent it on buying books and doing research. And that is how so many books came into being, because of his hard work, back-breaking hard work to establish Konkani. And that is why he wrote different kinds of books, not only grammar, history, geography, plays, novels, and translations. Great achievement. Of course, there were others, as you said, Edouard de José Brun de Souza, who started the first ever Konkani periodical from Pune. That I don't know why he reached Pune, but then most of the other rest of work has happened in Mumbai. Like we had Eliot de Eli, who was working in the field of literature, particularly in the Roman script, because he wanted to reach out to the Catholic brethren who were under, who were not so nationalistic because of the Portuguese influence. So that was the great work done by these Goenkars here. So Goa and Mumbai has a very, very special relationship. I don't know how many of you, and of course you people know, have you heard of Rama Kamoti or Ram Kamti? Ram Kamti is the one who was among the top bureaucrats of the British, in British service. He was the head of the mint, and he was so envied by the Britishers because of the knowledge that finally he was unnecessarily caught in a trap. And finally he died, and after his death, his innocence was proved. But there are many, many more, Bhau, Daji Lad, and so many who have contributed richly to the making of Mumbai. And I'm very proud of them because they belong to my territory. Yes, please.
I just wanted to add that, in the rest of India where the British were colonizers, the attitude towards local languages was very different. In the sense that, it was obviously, the reason was conversion, that they wanted to do their dictionaries and in order to get the Bibles written and published. But in Marathi, for instance, or in many of the other languages, some of the best dictionaries will be the dictionaries that the colonial government did. The Portuguese had a very different attitude towards Konkani. They believed that it was the link between the old way of life, the Hindu way of life, and so they were very against Konkani being used by the converts in local life, and they therefore tried to I think through the whole of their education system and through even the public sphere, they tried to put Konkani down. Yes. And absolutely, therefore, what Shenoy Goimbab started, what Damodar Mausa continued, was actually literally groundwork, like starting it off again. Whereas Marathi has a 700-year history of, of literature, the Konkani history goes back only about 150 years or so, but it is no less rich and no less powerful. For instance, one of the first books I read about the expat experience, about the experience of a worker in the Gulf was Carmedine. And both Abhay and I have discussed this often about how Carmedine was such an eye-opener, because it was not the men who went. In everywhere else, it was men who went out. Here it was women who went as domestic servants. And Carmedine is a wonderfully empathetic description of the way a woman would live and be at that time, long ago. It's a time that we've almost lost, because now having a relative in Dubai is kind of like everybody's got someone in the Gulf somewhere.
My own daughter is in the Gulf.
There you go.
But just to sort of, again, to respond to what Jerry's saying, it's very interesting, the sort of contrary fate of a language and status of a language. Marathi in the 17th century was still known as Maharati, whereas Konkani was known as the lingua canarim, or the lingua de Brahmanash. So the language of the Brahmins, the language of the Canaries. But at the same time, as Jerry says, when the Portuguese colonized us, it was also called the lingua de criado, so language of the servants. One of the most popular galis in Konkani is mal criad, which is, yes, a bad servant. So it's a very interesting way in which one language has occupied different rungs, different classes in its career, over the years. At one point of time, it was considered to be spoken by the elites, and at the other point of time, considered to be spoken by servants. So the fall that Konkani has had, and then the way in which people like Shenoy Goimbab, Manohar Rai Sardesai, and Damodar Bab Mauzo have contributed to the way in which, the entire sort of language and its culture has been resuscitated, has been amazing. And to add to this, another interesting sort of observation is that, Shenoy Goimbab speaks about the Goan outside Goa, and one finds again and again in your literature, in your writing, Bhai, from Carmelin to your latest short story, this wonderful Maraniyatri, the almost obsessive exploration of the inner consciousness of the migrant. Carmelin, as Jerry points out, is this woman who goes to the Middle East, is exploited by an Arab who gets into several compromises so that her daughter gets a good education down in Goa. Whereas Maraniyatri, Bhai's short story, is about this migrant worker from Goa. He's a Bihari migrant who goes back to who at least, tries to go back to his, native village. And what's fascinating...
During COVID.
During COVID, yes, during the pandemic. What's fascinating is the way in which he occupies, or at least within him, you have both the languages coexisting. You have Konkani, and then suddenly, in moments of great lucidity, he lapses into Bhojpuri.
Correct.
So it's fascinating. So what are your thoughts, Bhai, about it?
Well, I think, it's very difficult to speak about my own writings. But yes, I keep experimenting. Of course, I don't do it deliberately. I'm inspired to write because the COVID was such a situation where I think human agony was at its top. So I couldn't stop but write about it. And particularly who suffered the most was the migrant. So migrant communities' sufferings have to appear in literature. So that is why I wrote it. But then, when you are inspired to write something, and you write something which has been several times told by others, I'm not interested in that. So I want to tell the same thing, but differently. That is how probably I adopt some different style, not consciously, but it comes of its own. I write in a style which is not been told in by the others. So that is why probably whether it is whose corpse is that, it's also about the same. The topic is the same, but given different treatment. So it happens. Anyway, I don't want to talk about my own, but because here is my translator who has given great work of translating one of the difficult, considered to be difficult novels into English. So.
Commercial break. If you have not read Boy Unloved, please get a copy. It's, I think, a Genankan, a thought experiment that Bhai conducted, looking at the idea that one of the necessities of human existence is love. That, we keep focusing on food, clothing, shelter, air, but we don't talk about how love actually nurtures us as well. So what happens if a young boy grows up in a totally loveless environment with two narcissist parents? How does he then respond to the rest of the world? That, I think, is one of the interesting things. There's a moment when he comes to Bombay as well. Yeah. And, of course, he comes to Bombay and has his first experience. So I often think, Bombay is in the imagination of Goa. Bombay was the corrupt city, the decadent magnet that was drawing its best people away and turning them into alien strangers who, when they came back, could only speak a little Konkani, enough for the grandparents. So a lot of my Goan friends would say, I only speak Konkani to my grandparents because they don't understand any other language. So there was a Akwe Mai or someone like that at home whom you spoke Konkani to. The rest of the time you spoke English. And in the Bombay imagination, there was Goa as the decadent place where, there were all these young wastrels and floozies. So in both senses, we looked at each other through the prisms of our own wanting, our own sense of where the deficiency was in us. So for me, I think, you talked about Konkani being, people being ashamed of it or being... When I was growing up, Goa was no big deal, like in the way people say Goa now. I remember Frank Simoy's advertising film, Goa in the Rains. It used to be played only in white man theaters, which means like South Bombay, like before the English film, Goa in the Rains. And you would imagine from that Goa was Roman Catholic. There was no Hindu Goa at all. There were all these little boys walking about in sort of, in kind of like altar boy costumes. And people, it's like, so really our imagination of each other is a curated imagination. Yes. It is the invention of very deliberate attempts. It was just that Taj wasn't selling rooms, in Goa in the Rains. So that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to sell the rooms. They did. And in the process, invented Goa for all of us.
Right.
Yes, right. I remember when as a child, I was in my teens, just before I appeared for SSA examination, I had to cross the border. It was not we needed some documents, but that generally we all used to make bilhete de identidade. Actually in English it would be identity card. But that time making bilhete de identidade was like making a passport to cross the borders. So we needed to cross that, and what we would do to go to Mumbai here, I would go this way to cross the cross Karwar border and then go to Mumbai. So it was a different time. I remember I was amazed when I was very young and very, what you would say, nationalist-minded, patriotic feelings I had within me. I crossed the border and then entered Karwar. And then I just hired a bike, two-wheeler, bike, ordinary, bicycle. And I went to a relative of mine. I was living some kilometers away. And as I was returning, it was 7 o'clock or rather after 6:30. And somebody whistled and made me stop. It was a policeman. And he said, there are no lights to the bicycle. I said, it's still open, bright light. No, after 6:30, after 7, you have to have your lights. You pay fine now. So how much? He told something like 10, 15 rupees. I don't remember now. But then I had no money on me that time. I had at the hotel or where I was putting up. So somebody came to me and said, Ari, give him 4 annas and he will settle it. And then I so painfully, in my India, in my independent India, I have to pay bribe. And I gave 4 annas to that policeman, and that was the first crime I committed on the soil of India. The first, I mean,
we will corrupt you.
Yeah, that is why I remembered that when you said that earlier. So this is the first lesson I learned about India. And I was really, I felt so painful that time, at that particular moment. So that was my first experience. But I think we are coming closer to the end.
I think so.
Then I would
just wrap.
end up saying my own experience. I did my college in Mumbai. And I was so naive. I read about Mahatma Gandhi. I had read about Sardar Patel. And when I came to Mumbai, and I took my admission in Podar College, well, you won't believe, I was so naive. I came all the way from Goa with 200 rupees in my pocket, and leaving about 30 rupees that time, I had to pay for the railway ticket from Biti to Goa, and I didn't have, hardly 150 rupees I had left on. And I went to get the admission in my college. Back home, for the school fees were about 8 rupees, 10 rupees, 15 rupees, that's all. So I thought it would be 100 rupees maximum. And then I went to and I wanted admission in college and hostel. So I went to the college and got the admission, and they asked me to pay 150 rupees. And went for hostel admission, they said pay 250 rupees admission. And I didn't have more than 130, 50 rupees on me. So what to do now? So I went with the forms to the principal. And you know, the principal was Professor Willinkar. Professor Willinkar, at that time, who became Wrangler of Delhi University or somewhere, but then was a great man. I still remember him. I really loved him that time. What a posture. He was like an European with churut in hand, pipe in hand. But he was just coming out, and I recognized him, and I went to him, sir, I have a difficulty. What is it? I said, I have come from Goa. The moment I said Goa, he stopped. And he said, what is the problem? I said, sir, I have only 100 rupees, and I have to pay 250 rupees here, 350. Give the form. He wrote there, admit, accept 100 rupees. Wow. Of course, I had to pay back after coming back, but that was my first experience. Wow, what a Mumbai. But that too, at the hands of a Goan that I got the admission. So that is what I admired Goa and Mumbai.
I think...
And he also got a wife from Bombay. Point note kiya jaye Milad. Love jihadi.
I think on that note, I think